Judith Sears-Poisson. I'm the Communications Director for IRP, and very pleased on Catherine and IRP's behalf to be welcoming Jennifer Randles. First time in Wisconsin.
First time in Wisconsin.
We're happy to have her here for many reasons. Jennifer is professor and chair in the Department of Sociology at California State University, Fresno. And today she'll be speaking about diaper dilemmas, parenting and poverty, and basic needs gaps in the U.S. social safety net. And I want to say I'm especially thrilled to have Jennifer here because I worked on a fast focus policy brief based on her work. I would encourage you all to check that out on the IRP website. And I learned a lot, and it was fascinating for me to work on, and she was great to work with. So thrilled to have her here. Questions during the talk for clarification are fine. If it's more substantial things you want to ask about or talk about, holding those till the end would be great. And we have until 1:30, so
great.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Judith. I was going to give a nod to the wonderful policy brief. It took a rather long-ish article and condensed it down and distilled things beautifully. And even the suggested title before Judith knew about this was Diaper Dilemma. So I like alliteration way too much. But as I was telling Judith this morning, I've already gotten some feedback on that brief of people who respond as people often do to this research, which is, of course, poor parents would struggle with diapers. We know little kids need diapers, so if they're struggling financially, this is something they struggle with, but I just didn't think about it. And that's actually a common theme through a lot of the research I've done on this topic and when I present on this. So I present to a lot of academic audiences. I also present to a lot of community audiences. So this presentation kind of combines my sense of those kind of two audiences because I'm often surprised by what people sometimes don't know about diapers. Okay, so the first thing I want to address is why study diapers and poverty. So what you're seeing here are the covers of my first two books. I like alliteration way too much, so because my first title was alliterative and my second one wasn't, I'm giving myself permission to go with Diaper Dilemmas for number 3. And so my first book, which was based on my dissertation, I know we have many grad students here. How many of you are grad students? Excellent. Okay. So the first one was my dissertation project. And I was looking at parenting programs, specifically healthy marriage and relationship programs for low-income parents. And when I was interviewing couples who were taking some of these government-funded classes, one of the questions I would ask them is, why are you here? What got your foot in the door? And quite a few couples told me that they were there for diapers. I was like, okay, kind of file it away. And then my follow-up project was on the responsible fatherhood policy, and I studied some community-based organizations for low-income dads. And especially in that research project, it was like my second interview. When I asked the dads, why are you here? He just said, diapers. I thought, okay, this sounds familiar, right? Dad number 4, dad number 7 kept saying diapers. And I thought to myself, okay, as I'm writing it up, let me go be a good academic and find a citation on diapers and the role that they play in low-income parenting. Because dads were telling me things like diapers are a currency of fatherhood. If I show up to my kid's mom's house, this was especially true for non-residential fathers, if I show up with a box of diapers, she'll let me see my kids. And I thought, wait, we're talking about promoting healthy, responsible fatherhood involvement. And I had these dads telling me that if they show up to their kid's house with a box of diapers, they can see their kids. Why aren't we talking about diapers when we're talking about things like fatherhood involvement? Another father's story, really the one probably that inspired me to pursue this path, a father that I call Christopher in the book, he told me that he faced a huge dilemma. He came to a point one week where he needed both diapers and milk for his baby, specifically formula. The baby was 10 months old. And he said, I couldn't afford both. We couldn't afford both. We had money for one, so I wrote a hot check. And I'll never forget what he told me. He said, I didn't make a good decision, but I made the right one. He says, when your baby needs formula and diapers, you got to find a way to get both. And so that led to his subsequent incarceration and actually being arrested in front of his 10-month-old son. And so I'm looking for the research on diapers, and there really wasn't much out there about 5 years ago when I started this project. And so I said, I think my next research project has just chosen me. We've got to look at the role of diapers, especially in low-income parenting. So when I present on this research, I like to talk about what's often called diaper need in the research on this, which is lacking sufficient diapers to keep an infant dry, comfortable, and healthy. I like to add the qualification there in the parentheses without sacrificing other basic needs. Because even if parents can provide diapers, if they're having to forego other basic needs such as food to get those diapers, there's still a need there. And I like to talk about diaper need as common, harmful, expensive, and invisible. So diaper need is actually a really common problem across the United States. Richest country on the planet, but about 1 in 3 families with infants and toddlers in this country struggle to get sufficient diapers for their children. It's also associated with a variety of adverse social, economic, psychological, and physical effects. And I could give a whole presentation on just these. But social, we know low income and poor parents struggle with social isolation. One of the ways that parents are dealing with this is just not leaving their house because they have to have their baby in a diaper. So a lot of social issues, a lot of economic issues. As I'll share a little bit more here in a moment. We have a lot of parents who aren't going to work or going to school because they don't have the diapers they need to drop their baby off at daycare. Psychological. The Smith et al. Study from 2013 that first found the stat that 1 in 3 families struggle with diaper need also found that diaper need is actually a stronger predictor of maternal mental health and food insecurity. And my qualitative research shows some of the reasons that that's the case. And then physical effects for both parents and children. So a lot of the moms that I interviewed about their experiences with diaper need found that they were managing this by going without their own food, their own menstrual supplies, their basic needs, and then of course with kids. I'm doing a project with some colleagues who run a diaper bank looking just at children who have been hospitalized for diaper dermatitis, or what we more colloquially call diaper rash, UTIs, and yeast infections in the diaper area that are primarily associated with prolonged diaper wear. And I want that to settle in for a minute. There are diaper rashes that get so severe that kids have to be hospitalized to treat them. These are really serious problems that have both moral, right, social, economic costs, and also some pretty significant healthcare cost. Expensive. Oh, another case of how it costs more to be poor. So we're finding that low-income and poor families can end up spending twice or more as much on diapers because they lack the means to use cost-cutting strategies, such as bulk purchasing, lower per-unit purchasing, harder for parents to buy online because they can't afford to purchase a full box of diapers at one time. And so a recent study that just came out in Health Equity a couple of months ago, it was a study, really interesting study looking at census tracts, found that diapers in higher income areas typically cost about 21 cents, depending on size. But diapers in lower income areas cost about twice as more because what a lot of parents are having to do is buy diapers at places like the corner store or the dollar store, where diapers can cost, and this is just astounding to me, they found some places where they were charging diapers $1.50 each. Anyone want to guess, because some of you know from lived experience, how many diapers a baby will go through in a day? If you had to guess? 10 or 12 is typical, absolutely. Yeah, so this gets very expensive, right? And as I was interviewing moms, my daughter was also in diapers, and it's horrific to think that I was spending half as much per diaper on my daughter's diapers as an affluent, privileged woman than the mothers I was talking to when they had many fewer resources. But despite all this, diapers are still largely invisible when it comes to social safety net policies. So diapers are not recognized as a basic need of early child care in US means-tested policies and programs. Now, 5 years ago when I started this research, I could say this pretty unequivocally. I'm happy to report that this is starting to change, and I'll talk about some ways that it's starting to change. But for the most part, there is no systematic, means-tested public assistance program that systematically provides diapers in all areas. So this is a really big problem, right, given all of the other things that we've talked about. So why do diapers matter? So the average monthly diaper bill for one child is about $85 a month. And the reason that I start with this is because I've given many presentations, including to academic audiences, where the first question I get is, I get what you're saying here about diaper need, but how much can a diaper really cost? They're a lot. If you haven't gone down a diaper aisle in a while or bought a box of diapers in a while or ever, they're a lot of money. If you have a single parent that's earning full-time minimum wage work, the federal minimum wage, we're looking at about 8% of their earnings for diapers alone, not accounting for any other expenses. The average child in the US will use about 6,000 to 10,000 diapers before being toilet trained on average at the age of around 30 to 36 months. So it's a lot of diapers. If you look state by state at TANF benefits, there are some states where just to afford diapers is going to use almost half of the state TANF benefit for a family of 3. So a lot of people, when I present on this work, will say, well, yeah, but a lot of poor parents are getting cash assistance, right? We don't need a special program for diapers because they can use the cash assistance to get diapers. And then I'm like, yeah, but when your benefit's 180 and your diapers are 85, right, that's a big problem. Almost half of infants and toddlers in the United States live in low-income and poor families, and we know that children 5 and younger, so children of that primary diapering age period, are the most likely to be poor. And diapers are categorized as an unallowable expense in our food assistance programs, such as SNAP and WIC. They're in the same category as alcohol, pet food, and toilet paper. So what I want to talk mostly about today, and this has really been a multi-pronged, multi-year project, looking at diaper policies, the growing National Diaper Bank movement, but mostly focused on parents' experiences of diaper needs. So what are the lived experiences? How are parents managing this problem, and what are the ramifications of that? So here are my participant demographics. So some things that you'll quickly note. Mostly women of color. I didn't recruit according to race or really even sex. This was really hard. I put out all kinds of recruitment materials, very careful to have images that didn't seem to be gendered. The first 2 people who contacted me were dads. I was really excited because I wanted both mothers and fathers, but the 2 fathers proceeded to ask their co-parent all the questions about the diapers, and then I just kept recruiting moms, which, right, that's a finding in and of itself. This is mostly an issue that moms are struggling with. Education, we're looking, right, more likely to struggle if you have little education, more likely to struggle as single mother, more likely to struggle if unemployed, but being part or full-time employee doesn't necessarily protect you from diaper need. Most moms that I spoke with had 1 child in diapers, but some had 2, some even had, well, 1 had 3, it was 2, excuse me. Both were custodial grandmothers. But if you'll notice, a lot of them were getting other sources of assistance. Which suggests, as many moms told me, that, right, this is not enough. Our social safety net is too paltry to address this issue. Yeah.
Just on your last slide,
Yeah.
more than half of the moms are getting TANF.
Yeah.
In some states, TANF basically doesn't exist. So can you say a little bit about if this is just common or?
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, so these are all recruited from California. And yes, so over half and almost most had WIC, right? Is it common that mothers who get TANF struggle with diaper need? What was the specific question?
Just in some states, basically no poor people get TANF.
Right.
It just doesn't exist. So just what is TANF like in California? How should we think about it?
Yeah, so California has relatively generous TANF benefits, and they've pushed back on a lot of the policy changes that came out of the Personal Responsibility Act. So we're more generous in terms of time limits, things like that. And our average benefit for a family of 3 is over $800. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. That's very good. I should have contextualized this. So all of these parents were recruited from California. Okay, so what do diapers mean to mothers? So one of the things that I thought was really important was that mothers shared with me that diapers were really often the first item that they bought when they got cash assistance or where they got their income earned from work. Half, and I think this is particularly notable, half of the mothers that I interviewed said that diapers were the household expense that they worried about most, more than food, more than electricity, more than rent, that this was for them at least, their most pressing financial concern in terms of household expenses. A third told me that they experienced anxiety or depression that was directly related to diaper need. And an expression that many of them used was, it's just really stressful living diaper to diaper. So kind of a play on the paycheck by paycheck, a lot of stress living diaper to diaper. So thinking about mothers accounting and diaper need being a bigger worry than food, a lot of moms told me that it had a lot to do with the fact that, one, they were getting some kind of food assistance, so WIC or food stamps, or they had access to food banks because they knew what food banks were. Not a lot of moms knew that diaper banks existed. But they often talked about having more strategies to manage food insecurity in a way that they just didn't with diaper need. So a mom that I call Melissa, 32, Asian American mother of 3, she told me, as long as you portion sizes and know how much your children are eating, you know how much food you're buying. But diapers, it's uncontrollable because you don't know how many times they're going to pee or poop a day, and if they're sick and have diarrhea, they're going to go through way more than normal. I don't worry as much about food because I can manage it with what I get in food stamps, but I worry more about diapers because there's no support and they go like no tomorrow. So one of the things I want to pick up on this is the diarrhea part, which is probably a statement that hasn't been said in this seminar before. That was a crisis for moms. I had a lot of moms who talked to me about, and they always said, the thing is my baby's sick, and I worry about having a sick baby. But when you're struggling with this problem, it's more than a sick baby, it means more diapers. And so thinking about it in terms of just the effects on maternal mental health, there were moms that told me that they had an anxiety attack every time they did a diaper change. Because with every change, they had one less diaper, right? One less diaper in their supply. And so talking about a sick baby, I had a lot of moms, and I was interviewing like when their baby was sick, and they're like, right now. He usually goes through 5 or 6 a day. I can stretch them, but today he's used 15, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. They start crying. And so this idea of a sick baby is more than a sick baby. It means more diapers, right? Just something that parents are, when my daughter got sick and diarrhea, this is not something I worried about, but this is something that's constantly on their mind. And even some moms told me that they had to be particularly careful to not feed their kids anything that would give the children intestinal upset, primarily because it would mean more diapers. A lot of moms that were employed or had an employed household member told me that it just wasn't enough. And in fact, one of the issues with that was that it was almost like the people didn't expect them to struggle with this problem. That is, though work protected a family from diaper need, which that wasn't the case. So a lot of moms who were struggling with diaper need worked. Many full-time, but it wasn't enough to cover the cost of diapers. And in fact, there are ways in which employment can increase the cost of diapers, because as I'm sure many of you know from experience, daycare centers, right, in-home childcare requires a certain number of diapers, disposable diapers specifically, to be able to drop your child off each day. So the cost of diapers actually is a way that employment costs could be increased, and then a lot of moms, right, as we know, just couldn't afford to work because what they would earn would not really be a lot more than the child care. Mothers who lived in households with an employed adult really underscored the stresses of working class or the working poor whose jobs didn't necessarily protect them from diaper need. And I had Patricia, a 29-year-old Latina mother of 3, who told me, childcare is too much for us both to work. And I'm really embarrassed to ask people for help because they'll say, well, your husband works, so you should be able to afford diapers. But no, there's more things I have to pay for. I think it's even more of a problem because a lot of the working class, we don't get a lot of extras. I barely get WIC, I barely get any financial support, and it took my husband getting deducted in hours for us to possibly get our food stamps back. It's harder because everything has to come out of his paycheck, and we literally have to pinch and dime every single thing for the diapers. And when she says pinch and penny and dime for diapers, that was very common. A lot of moms were affording diapers by literally putting change together. And I had a lot of stories of searching in the couch kitchens or going and selling recyclables to get that next pack of diapers. Also had a lot of moms who told me welfare isn't enough, right? Even in, and thanks to Sarah's point, right, California, a pretty generous state when it comes to TANF and the social safety net, it still wasn't enough to cover those diaper needs. So all forms of assistance, WIC, food stamps, cash assistance, could potentially offset the cost of combined household expenses. Mothers told me that the benefits they received were often insufficient. So I had one mom, Solange, 24, Black, and a mother of 5. If I recall correctly, she had 2 kids in diapers. That was really stressful. 1 kid in diapers was hard. 2 kids in diapers was, moms even questioned their childbearing decisions. Like, why would I have 2 kids in diapers at the same time? She said, when I talked to my case manager, I tried to explain how I still have to get everything these children need. And being low income, it isn't the easiest to survive. There's this very old saying, if you have clothes on your back, food in your mouth, and the lights on, you're okay. But nobody cares about the other stuff. Like, does your baby have diapers? People think that people like me are ungrateful because we need more resources, but there's more to life than just clothes on your back, food in your mouth, and the electricity being on. They're like, well, you get WIC, you get this service, you should be able to afford everything, but no one cares about the diapers. And I kept hearing this over and over again. I heard it when it came to their TANF caseworkers, their WIC workers, and I also heard it in things like when they went to the doctor. They're like, why on like my intake form when I go for a well baby visit, they ask me if I have enough food, but they don't ask me if I have enough diapers. Right? So not only does this matter practically, but it has a really significant symbolic import, because food programs, for example, right? We know that WIC and TANF WIC and SNAP don't cover all food needs, but at least they codify the idea that food is a basic need to which all people should have access regardless of their ability to pay. And the fact that moms are struggling so much with diapers, a need they know their children have, but one that's not officially recognized. It's like they're working so hard to meet this need that people don't really officially recognize their children have. So what ends up happening is mothers perform a lot of what I call diaper work, and I have a whole paper that I'm happy to share just on these concepts. But I wanted to give a brief nod here. Diaper work really emerges as a specific form of care labor, created specifically by the conditions of poverty and a very weak social safety net, especially around diapers. So I draw on Patricia Hill Collins' theory of mother work and also Marjorie DeVoe's concept of feeding work. This is very feminized labor, and it's really cognitively, emotionally, and physically taxing. The kind of things that mothers are having to do to manage this problem. And so when I talk about diaper work, I'm not talking about the kind of diaper work that I did. I'm not talking about, you know, making sure that the changing table was stocked and going to Target and, you know, buying on sale and bringing them home, getting them out of the car and changing the diapers and disposing of them, right? That's kind of how diapering works across classes. I'm talking about the planning, the calculating, the saving, stretching, sacrificing, and innovating. Mothers were very innovative around this issue that poor and low-income mothers are having to do. And this is a type of diaper work that more privileged parents, and I'll definitely include myself in this, we just don't have to do. We don't have to think about diapers in this way. So this leads to what I call inventive mothering, and I won't say too much here, but it's a concept I'm using to critique the concept of intensive mothering, which a lot of work on intensive mothering since Hayes first coined that concept, but it tends to be what's intensive in terms of middle class parenting, right? Like making sure your kids get into the right school, making sure they're read to. But parenting becomes intensive in very classed ways due to forms of childcare labor like diaper work that emerge specifically because of the conditions of poverty. And so what I find is that mothers are very innovatively resourceful. They use cognitively extensive strategies. I'm going to show you just a couple on the next slide, and really trying to engage in diaper work practices that are about deflecting stigma. Okay, so what am I talking about with diaper work? So I could have had many slides. So here are just some of the strategies that mothers use to manage diaper need. Okay. They bought larger and more absorbent diapers that ironically cost more, but a lot of mothers figured out is if you buy a slightly larger size than your child needs and they're more expensive and have more of those super absorbent polymers, they're less likely to leak and you can stretch them a little bit longer, leave them on a little bit longer. Reusing wet and soiled diapers. Yes. There are many, many parents across this country that are managing this problem by, out of necessity, and they feel bad about it, but talking about impossible choices, leaving diapers on for hours or sometimes even days at a time, or taking off the wet diaper, wringing it out, and then putting it back on. Devising makeshift diapers. So if you're wondering why I have a picture of toilet paper and duct tape here, that is because these are two of the most common objects that families struggling with diaper need will use to create makeshift diapers when they don't have anything else. Other common objects, paper towels with hair ties or the bread ties that come on the bread packages, t-shirts, pillowcases, menstrual supplies, adult incontinence products, pretty much everything that could be fashioned into a diaper, parents are fashioning into a diaper. Foregoing other basic needs, and here I mean parents. A lot of parents told me they went without their own food, their medicine, going out without their menstrual supplies or using the menstrual supplies they could afford as diapers, and foregoing clothes and other things. Early toilet training. This was especially common. Almost every Black mother that I interviewed told me that they were starting to potty train their children around 12 to 15 months of age. And if you remember from an earlier slide, the average age of potty training in the United States is closer to what? 30 to 36 months. So typically, most families in the United States will initiate potty training based on child-directed signals around 2.5. A lot of kids have made progress by about 36 months and are fully potty trained by about 40 months. But I talked to a lot of moms who, like, once there was that first birthday, time to potty train. Because if you potty train, you get rid of the diapers. And a lot of people, including pediatricians and experts, will tell you that this is really before it's developmentally, or most kids are developmentally ready to do this. There was a lot of diaper trading, bartering, and theft. There are entire diaper markets that have emerged in response to this problem. Diaper budgets. Oh. So I shared this with several people in here already today. I did not think to ask about this initially, but really early into my interviews, I had a mom mention to me that she had 7 diapers left. When I was interviewing her that day, that afternoon, she had 7 diapers left. And she said, and I know those 7 diapers are going to last me until about 9:30 tomorrow night. And it's one of those things you hear in an interview that really stops you in your tracks. You're like, wait a second. So my daughter was in diapers, and I was like, I could not tell you with any degree of specificity how many diapers I ever had at any given moment. And I sure as heck couldn't tell you to the minute how long they would last. But the number of mothers who told me, when I started to ask this question explicitly, I have 5, or I have 3, or I have 9. Right? But it's not only the fact that there's so few, again, it's that degree of specificity and what it takes cognitively and emotionally to keep a running track of your diapers and knowing exactly, sometimes down to the minute, how long those diapers are going to last. And it makes sense, right? Because if you don't necessarily know where your next box of diapers is coming from, you need to know exactly how long you have until you have to get more. So mothers would keep really, really careful track of diaper budgets. I had a lot of moms who told me that 4 a day, that is it. That's it. 4, and once they're on number 4, because I got to stretch that box until a certain date, that's my diaper budget. Something that was really interesting, a lot of moms talked to me about making sure that a diaper was used all the way up or completely full. And that was really interesting because just in talking to my friends, right, different class sizes, this was not I didn't ever think of a diaper as making sure that it was all the way used up. But moms were really making sure that the diaper was at its capacity. A lot of moms would, like when they were bathing the baby, and they would take off a diaper that hadn't been peed in or had only been peed on once, a lot of moms would like put the diaper back on. So there's a lot of what we call diaper stretching strategies. A lot of prolonged diaper wear. Tracking and limiting children's food and liquid intake. Mothers were always careful to say, like, I'm not starving my kid, I'm not making them go thirsty, but once I know that they're getting enough to meet their needs, I won't give them extra because an extra cup of water means an extra diaper. Selling blood plasma for diaper money. Had 7 moms tell me that they sold blood plasma solely for the purpose of providing their children diapers. Taking on additional jobs, childcare, house cleaning, collecting recyclables, and then a big one, just avoiding leaving home. Because especially if you have housing with a floor like this, you can leave a baby without a diaper and it's not too hard to clean up. So if you're at home and you're not under the surveillance of people, especially under the watchful eyes of people that may report you to CPS, you can leave a baby without a diaper. But once you go out into public, you have to have something that's recognized as a normal and clean diaper. A lot of parents told me, you can't really tell when a baby's hungry, but you can tell when their diaper is too wet or too dirty. And it was a really common theme mothers talked about being very concerned about being reported to CPS if they were out in public and their children were recognized as not wearing an appropriate diaper. A lot of moms also told me that they would save their limited diaper supplies specifically for public outings. And when they could save up money for a diaper, that was when they went grocery shopping, because they had the diaper that they could take the kid into the grocery store. So a lot of worry and concern about what their children look like. I remember when my daughter was in diapers, I never worried about how full her diaper looked. I was like, I'll just change it when it's convenient, right? But that's a very specific class, and I would argue racial privilege. So as with everything else, the pandemic certainly affected this problem. So I'm sure many of us remember empty shelves a lot of different empty shelves around March or May of 2020. I don't know if you had the experience where like there were certain shelves that were really empty, like the toilet paper and paper towel aisle. And then if you went to the infant care section, formula and diapers were often the first things that were wiped out. We know that a lot of people who were doing this were people who had the means to go and buy the limit and go to different stores and buy the limit. But of course, these families didn't have the means to do that. I did another subset of interviews about 6 months after the pandemic to talk to moms, parents about how the pandemic had affected their experience of diaper need as well as their coping strategies. Another problem is that there were some organizations that were giving moms diaper support, so a lot of community-based organizations that just didn't have any in-person services or reduced hours of operation. And as with many things, diaper prices have increased significantly. So diaper companies will tell you higher demand, higher input material costs, supply chain disruptions, and I think that's part of it. But evidence suggests that the markup on diapers, which has been about 20% in some cases, is actually exceeding any of the additional costs to make the diapers. So we have some diaper companies that are getting pretty rich in all of this. And it's proprietary, so don't quote me on this, but I did get some information from one of the major diaper companies in the US about what the markup is on premium diapers, and there's evidence that suggests it's about 80%. It's a lot. And we know that many of the hardest hit industries were those that employed mothers with very young children, most likely to be in diapers, and then they were also more likely to drop out of the labor force or lose hours, and then of course we had daycare closures. Yes?
Question on that
Yeah.
80% markup. Is that just like traditionally across the board, or is that in relation specifically to this since COVID-19 rise in the price?
The markup on premium diapers, that was happening before COVID. And some people think that they're actually marking them up more because they can now justify, there's additional input cost. But yeah, they've gone up a lot. Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for asking that. Okay, so some takeaway points from this. Mothers think of diapers much like food and housing, right? A basic human need required for health, well-being, and dignity. Dignity came up a lot in this, right? Like being a child who looks clean and also being a parent who has a clean child. Practically speaking, moms talked a lot about how like WIP and SNAP and housing programs, right? They provide need-based aid to cover some, if not all, of families' food and shelter requirements. But symbolically, they talked about how these policies were really important because they recognize these needs exist. Right? You have WIC. Okay, so right, it means that formula or milk, right, children have nutritional needs. And moms talked a lot about how the fact that we don't have a comparable program for diapers ends up being really hard because it's almost like, why am I working so hard to meet this need that the government and other people don't really recognize that we have? So one of the moms, Natalie, 29, multiracial mother of 3, she said, well, I wonder if people who decide policy just think, well, they had a choice to have that child and there are all these other programs out there. They should be able to provide at least this one thing if they choose to have that baby. Nutrition, we're not going to take that away. That's definitely a necessity. Housing, people need housing, so we'll help with that. But diapers, that parent can figure that out on their own. So a lot of moms talked about this, and I'm going to digress here for a minute. When the Dobbs decision about abortion came out this summer, I was looking at the map on CNN of like all the states that had trigger laws. And I looked at that and I think that looks really familiar. I'm doing some work on state-by-state diaper taxes. And there are still 29 states in the US that have diaper taxes ranging anywhere from about 4 to 7%. And every single state that had a trigger law related to abortion still has a diaper tax in effect. So, right? What are we getting at there? The states that are going to limit abortion access and we might say compel people to have children that they might not otherwise have are also literally taxing more the products that are needed to take care of that baby that they have to have. I'll stop my digression. Moms talked a lot about how it was hard asking for help for diapers. Moms like, people, they get food, but diapers, there's something about diapers, right? That some people may think are a luxury, but it's not. It's a basic need. They also especially feared that when it came to diapers, that asking for this specific good was going to cause people to think that they were bad moms. So Audra was one mom who talked about this, 32 white and a mother of 5. She said it's sad to need diapers because you don't want to feel like you're failing as a parent. I hate it when people are like, well, you knew what you were getting into having kids. People get food, but they just judge you more when you struggle with diapers. Ashley, 17, Latina and a mother of 1, similarly said, I guess policy people think diapers are the main thing that's a parent's responsibility. If you ask for help because you can't afford diapers, I feel like they think we're just not taking care of our kids, that we're just too lazy to go and get them. So they talked a lot about how there was specific diaper-related stigma. And also with the pandemic, we had a lot of compromised coping strategies. So as part of this project, I'm also studying the diaper bank movement. And as I was following different diaper banks around the country, they were all reporting anywhere from a 3 to 10-fold increase in terms of the number of diaper requests that they were getting. Many diaper banks were struggling to keep pace, especially with shelter in place and other restrictions. A lot of parents lost access to a lot of the places where they were getting diaper support. And they also reported not being able to rely as much on their social networks because of limited in-person contacts, or people in their networks were also struggling financially. But again, contributing to that social isolation. So I think in the last few years, we've really seen this problem get worse, not only because of the economic challenges, but because also mothers have less access to common coping strategies. Okay. Also a little bit of a digression, but this is the most common question I get when I present on this research. So much so that I put a slide on it in every presentation, not that anyone here would have asked that, but I also published a paper with this as a main title because I get this question all the time. Why don't they just use cloth? So we were talking about dinner last night. I get what I've started calling diaper hate mail. So every time I speak on this in the media, I just prepare myself for the emails I'm going to get. My sense is that they're mostly older white men who say something along the lines of, well, when my kids were in diapers 50 years ago, we just used cloth. I've learned not to respond, but a couple of things here, right? 50 years ago, only about 10% of kids were diapered in disposable diapers. They were not normative. That has changed significantly. Only about 1 in 20 infants and toddlers in the United States are diapered mostly or exclusively in reusable diapers. It's no longer normative in the way it once was, which has huge implications, right, for parents, especially low-income mothers of color, that are worried about being out in public and being surveilled, right, for having an appropriate diaper. So a couple things I want to make, points I want to make about cloth. It's really a class-specific privilege. So we don't have a lot of actual evidence on who uses cloth, but the few studies out there find that it tends to be people who live in households that make $50,000 or more, own their homes, and have at least one stay-at-home parent. Not surprisingly. So poor and low-income parents just really don't have the context or the resources to cloth diaper. Startup costs can be anywhere from $500 or more. I don't know if anyone's done any kind of reusable diapers, but every diaper can be $20 to $25, and then you have to get them in different sizes if they're not convertible. It gets really expensive really fast, and there can be special detergents, etc. There's also just the cost of cleaning, right? Sarah and I were having a great conversation about laundry last night. And if you've done laundry in a laundromat recently, it gets really expensive really fast. It's also illegal in most states to wash cloth diapers in public laundry facilities. So even if you do it, you're spending upwards of $5 to $6 a load. And mothers actually found that using cloth diapers ends up being more expensive than using disposable. And that doesn't include the value of their time to go to the laundromat, etc. Daycare requirements. A lot of mothers told me, the people who care for my child, whether it's a daycare center or like an in-home care center or even their mom, they're like, I rely on my mom for childcare. She doesn't charge me, so the last thing I'm going to do is actually have her deal with the dirty cloth diapers every day. So even all different kinds of childcare that they were using, they wanted to provide disposables. Aisha Black, 20 and a mother of 1, she talked at length about her fears of using cloth diapers, and this came up in several other interviews. Aisha had been a former foster youth and had been through the child welfare system and really haunted her, especially around diapers. So she told me, they might see it as a kid in rags. That's the word that a lot of people use to describe cloth diapers. They're not thinking about the ones with like the fancy little closures and the ones that cost $20. I think they're thinking more about that like cotton muslin cloth that I was diapered in. I'm sure they can take your kid based on what you believe. And if you believe that using cloth is better than using Huggies, well, I wouldn't use a cloth diaper on her because of diaper rash. And I just can't be seen in public with her in a cloth diaper. It was unthinkable. Mothers also encounter a lot of setbacks in seeking diaper support. 2/3 of mothers had accessed or tried to use diaper distribution services at least once, and they had really mixed experiences. About half said it was a really positive thing. Half said that it just wasn't worth it and they were never going to seek diaper support again. A lot of time and energy, right? If you don't have a car, you do have a car, gas, right, to get to the diaper distribution center, the diaper bank or the diaper pantry, or if you have to get on the bus and take your kids with you, it can be really inconvenient. A lot of times, diaper banks and pantries will vary quite a bit in how many diapers they give out. Some are great and have the means to provide for a family's full diaper needs. Mothers really benefited from those kind of programs, but there are some diaper banks and pantries out there that have a limit, like 10 to 12 diapers, which, right, it's a day. So mothers like, it's not worth it. Angela told me, Angela 20 Black and a mother of one, it just gets hard because you have to buy a bus pass, you have to make it all the way downtown. They usually want you to bring the baby so they can verify you have a kid. So when I said proper documentation or proof of need, it often meant having the baby with you, which could be really hard for some families. They ask for a lot just for you to get what you need. I don't blame them because a lot of people scam the system, but most people really need the help. After all that, you only get 15 to 20 diapers, and that would be gone in less than a week. And honestly, it's pretty embarrassing. So the stigma comes up again. To ask for diapers for your own kid because it comes with questions like, well, are you not taking care of them? And the last thing we want in our life is child protective services when a lot of us have been in the foster care system before. So being afraid to go to these diaper distribution centers, one, because they didn't want to provide the documentation, or two, they just felt too much shame in asking. So a really hard thing to do. Almost done. Yeah, is that Hannah?
Yeah, what if people, do you have any insights about what people did like before reusable diapers were part of the norm, I guess?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. So when kids were mostly diapered in cloth, it was mostly cloth and mostly some cloth diapers became more sophisticated than the cotton muslin. But like I remember talking to my mom and grandma who used almost exclusively cloth, and it was just like you kind of dealt with them leaking. So this idea of like being afraid to be out in public and have your kid seen in a leaky diaper, it just wasn't, people kind of expected diapers to leak because they weren't as sophisticated. So interestingly, the first cloth, the first precursor to a cloth diaper was invented, there's the word I want, by a woman named Marion Donovan. You know where it was sold? So fascinating. Saks Fifth Avenue. Yeah. So cloth used to be very much associated with like being higher class like it is now. But a lot of moms also talk about how cloth is like signaling of poverty and a stigma that they want to avoid. But I think it was the fact that it just, people didn't expect diapers to be as good as they are now. They didn't have the super absorbent polymers. And another really important point, in the 1980s, if you look at potty training through the generations, over the last 60 years, the age of potty training has gone up by about a year. So in the 1950s, most kids were potty trained in the US by 18 months. And in the 1980s, it was closer to 24 to 30 months. And so potty training, there's a lot of issues around, is that because of disposable diapers, et cetera? But a lot of it had to do with you just had children in diapers for shorter periods of time as well. Does that answer your question? Okay, that's a good question. So I also asked mothers, what would you do if you could design diaper policies? And so before giving me a specific answer, they all emphasized the importance of having some kind of diaper support. And they all talked about it being equitable, easily accessible, and some kind of method that didn't layer shame and stigma on them when they were already feeling shame and stigma about the problem itself. The most common policy recommendation they gave was creating a program like WIC, but specifically for diapers. So I had a few that talked about maybe having like SNAP and WIC allow for the purchase of diapers, but a lot of moms told me that they don't cover their food needs. So unless WIC and SNAP increase their benefit levels to account for the cost of diapers, that wouldn't actually be very helpful. But all talked about finding some way in the social safety net to include diapers, not only because it would allow for more material support, but would also have that symbolic significance of, again, saying this is a basic need that we need to help people with. Diaper vouchers was something, California is the first state as of 2018 to have diaper vouchers. They add $30 per child just on top of your TANF benefit. It started out as a more blanket policy when it was first proposed. It also started out as a $135 voucher, kind of got whittled down to get passed. And so now you only qualify for a diaper voucher if you have a qualified work or educational plan under CalWORKs. So it's a work support. But the moms who got it said it was incredibly helpful, that just having the cash added on, they didn't have to submit receipts, they could just go to the store and buy the diapers they wanted in bulk, right, during their usual shopping trip. So it reduced the shame and stigma associated with seeking support through diaper banks. And they also advocated for more publicly funded diaper banks. Diaper banks are great. They're great. I founded a diaper bank at my campus, so I guess I'm kind of a diaper banker. And that's what they call them. So we call ourselves diaper bankers. Some diaper banks are distributing upwards of 50 million diapers a year. But based on our best data we have, we think that diaper banks, hundreds across the country, even more diaper pantries and diaper closets, only meet about 4% of the need. So they do great work, but it's just really scratching the surface. Okay, so in conclusion here, just wanted to leave you with some ideas for, based on this research and mothers' lived experiences, what are some promising policy approaches to addressing diaper poverty? I mentioned a little bit about vouchers. So Washington just passed a law this year. As of 2023, next November, Washington will also offer diaper vouchers for TANF recipients, and a lot of other states are trying to get similar diaper vouchers passed. San Francisco also has the nation's first, and as of right now, only publicly funded diaper bank. It offers free diapers. You can go and get, that's actually a picture of someone from the San Francisco Diaper Bank, both of these pictures. You can go and get 2 full boxes per month if you're a CalFresh recipient. And San Francisco, they just took extra money that they had as part of TANF and CalFresh and just said, we're going to buy diapers with it. So I'm hoping that more communities will follow. Child tax credits. We need them for a lot of reasons, but before they expired last December, we know that parents were buying basic needs, food, rent, childcare, right, and of course, a lot of parents were buying diapers. Fortunately, and again, in the last 5 years I've been studying this project, I've been pretty impressed with the progress, though it could be more. ACF just recently earmarked $10 million for the country's first diaper distribution demonstration and research pilot. So there are 7 diaper distribution organizations across the country. So for 5 years, there's going to be an evaluation of promising approaches to getting diapers into parents' hands. And then diaper taxes. So when I started this project, 42 states taxed diapers, and now we're down to 29. There's a couple ways you could look at this. Still over half tax them, more likely to have diaper taxes in states with a larger share of children of color, not surprisingly. But a lot of people in a lot of states are working to repeal their diaper taxes, along with taxes on menstrual products. So these taxes range from 4 to 7%, and that's just for state. So that doesn't include any other applicable municipal or county taxes. Right, we're literally taxing parents and increasing the cost of diapers. So even repealing those taxes could help this issue. And then I want to very briefly, in conclusion here, make a nod to a couple of bills that did get some traction recently. So they didn't get all the way through the legislative process, but there was the End Diaper Need Act of 2021 that proposed both funding for diaper distribution organizations and also tax exemptions for diapers as a medical necessity, which could be really crucial, paving the way for tax exemptions, and again, codifying that diapers are a basic need. And then we had the COVID-19 Diaper Assistance Act of 2021, and it earmarked $2 million. The House passed it, the Senate didn't. But I think it shows that more people are aware of this issue. Before, I've talked to a lot of diaper bankers who are really on the front lines of policy, and they said that really it hasn't been until the last few years where they could get legislators to actually talk about diapers. Like some would say, ooh, this is gross. Others would say, how much can a diaper really cost? Why don't they just use cloth? And so I think that the conversation, the political conversation around this is changing quite a bit, which is really promising. But for all the reasons I've talked about for the last almost hour, I'm about to stop. We still have quite a bit of work to do. So I'm going to end there, and I really look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and open it up to questions.
I have a question going back to these diaper stretching methods that
Mhm.
mothers were using. Did they give any indication about like how they gained this knowledge, how they kind of came up with these innovative techniques? So in particular, I'm kind of thinking about the idea that some of these like stretching and resourcing techniques can be like community gathered and shared information, but particularly with like the stigmatizing nature you talked about, I'm wondering how much of this is independent and then also maybe collective and community information.
That's a really good question. So I talked to a lot of moms who said this is what their moms did. This is what their friends do. There's also a lot of like diaper swapping. Like I had a lot of moms who, and I interviewed a couple of friendship pairs who would say, yeah, right, she's my diaper buddy. Like I run out and then I know she can get some. So it is very communal in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people are making money off of this. I heard this especially in the during the pandemic interviews, where people were buying these diapers, stockpiling them, and charging people like $1 a diaper, and moms were having to go on these, there's entire message boards that have come up around this problem, where people share information about this is where you can go, this is how many diapers they'll give you, this is what you need, this is what they can, you can tell them. Have a lot of people there are YouTube videos. You can go on YouTube right now and find out how to make a diaper out of duct tape and paper towels. And just, yeah, it seemed almost, it's a good question. Mothers almost talked about it like common knowledge. That this was, I had moms sharing information about things like bidets, so especially in the pandemic. This one mom said that when she came in, I forget what it was, she came into a little bit of money, so she bought all of her friends with little kids bidets. She said, that probably sounds weird. You probably haven't heard that before in interviews. And I said, no, I haven't. But yeah, there's a lot of information sharing around it. And there was even some people, I thought this is the kind of research that just can be so demoralizing at times, but then also revive your faith in humanity. There were some people in moms' communities that had a little bit of extra money. And so when they came across a diaper sale, they would buy a few boxes and just keep them at their house. And when they knew which people on their street had little kids, and they're like, hey, I got some if you ever need them, just come and let me know. So I think it's one of those things that is talked about a lot, and information is shared around diaper stretching strategies in certain social networks, and then in others it's something that people just don't think of. That's a really good question.
Yeah. If I could just ask one more off
Yeah.
it, even though that was like such a comprehensive answer.
I tend to talk. It's a very nice way of putting that's a comprehensive answer.
Maybe I'm just like projecting. But at any rate, I wanted to ask, do you have any sense of who is determined as the in-group then with this information sharing, and who would be out-groups?
Oh, that's a really good question.
If you don't have a sense of it, because it hasn't been asked.
No, in terms of an in-group, it's really interesting. It's really, think about that. The way moms talked about it, I had a lot of moms at the end, especially when I was doing debriefing, said, is there anything else you want to share with me? And they're just like, thanks for asking about this. This is something that I talk about a lot with my friends. This is something that, because we're in very socioeconomically similar networks, right? If you're struggling with this, they tend to have a lot of friends or sisters or cousins that tend to struggle with it too. As to your out-group question, I will say this. I wouldn't necessarily say this is an out-group, but it was interesting finding, especially in the pandemic interviews. So I had this one mom, really like a 2-hour interview, talking to me about all these things, the links she went to get diapers during that March to May 2022 period, going on the message boards, meeting people like almost in the middle of night, because there's also a lot of like Facebook groups that you can be part of that will share diaper resources. I'm part of the one in our community, and it's very active. And it's like a mom will go on there and post, hey, my kid's in a size 3, I just need 10. I just need to get to Thursday because then I get paid. I can give you 10 back on Thursday. And then within 5 minutes, you have 20 moms. Okay, I got you. Where can we meet? What's the intersection? Where's the street? But part of one of the out groups, I think sometimes is partners, co-parents. I talked to the mom that was, the interview was 2 hours. She goes, I don't know if this is really part of what you wanted to know, but as I'm hearing myself talk about this for 2 hours, my husband doesn't know anything about this. I was like, oh, that's interesting. What do you mean? She's like, well, he doesn't know we struggle. He just thinks I get the money and get the diapers. And I really don't think he knows the links I go to. And I wouldn't say that's true for every partner, but it was really interesting to me, kind of like the dads I initially interviewed, that when I said, well, how many diapers a day does your kid use? Where do you get the diapers? What brand do you use? It was just like, okay, hold on. Honey, what brand do we use? Oh, how many? Hold on, honey. How many diapers a day does he, And so that's really interesting. I think that it's a really gendered phenomenon. But yeah, the in-group and out-group, I would have to think about it more, but that's my probably still too comprehensive answer for now. Thank you.
I'm interested in the diaper vouchers. So for California, you said that it's money that was sort of justified in the name of diapers, but it's unrestricted through the TANF system.
Yes.
Do you know how it's going to work in Washington or other states? Is it also through TANF, and will it be unrestricted?
That is a really good question, and I have to say that's a question I do not know the answer to. I believe it's unrestricted. Don't have to turn in any receipts or anything. But that's a good question. But the fact that it was unrestricted for a lot of moms was really core to how valuable it was. I also talked to a lot of moms that lost it. Like I had a mom who had just lost her voucher a couple days before because she'd gotten in a car accident and could no longer fulfill the requirements of her work plan. And she's like, but I'm hurt now and I can't work, and now I lose my diaper voucher. So I think it's great that we have the diaper vouchers as a work support. Employment's very important. I would love to see a day where it's not just tied to the idea that diapers are only important to get moms to work, right?
Yeah, or I'm thinking of states where TANF is basically non-existent.
It's non-existent.
That's not going to be as an effective way to get it to people. So if there's other
Exactly.
ways to have a diaper voucher.
And the fact that it took over 7 years of very concerted political advocacy in California to get the diaper voucher. And again, it had to be whittled down a lot. I mean, California is really progressive, very generous social safety net comparatively. A lot of people are hopeful about vouchers in other states, but there are some states that I'm from Texas originally, and I don't have high hopes. Yes.
So there are a number of different kind of policy strategies
Yes.
proposed here. And you talked about the preferences among some of the parents you talked to about how they like to see this. What's your thought about kind of what's the best way to target this?
Can I say all of the above? If I had to pick one and one only, I would say probably vouchers. That are even less restrictive. So more than $30, because that's not even half of the average monthly diaper bill. I would like to see them more widely available. When California first proposed it, it was just based on an income requirement that was much closer to like SNAP. So I think having more people that could benefit from the voucher. But diaper banks are also doing a lot of really great things. A lot of diaper banks have different wraparound services, like they'll have immunization clinics, and they'll give diapers as an incentive for getting your kid immunized. Incentives are kind of a mixed bag. Some programs also have parents attend classes for certain things to get what a couple called mommy money. One mother who was very upset because she had to take a class on the importance of fathers. She was a single mom who was coming out of an abusive relationship, and she's like, I did it because they gave me $25, but it was ridiculous. But diaper banks are doing a lot of really great things, and something about diaper bankers, they're really the biggest policy advocates. But yeah, if I had to pick one, I would say the vouchers. Great question. Thank you.
What's the diaper industry's role in this? I mean, are they pro? I mean, because if people are bringing out diapers, they're not buying. They would be buying a lot more if they had vouchers. But are they worried about, they can't get the markup? I mean, I'm just curious.
It's a really good. So the National Diaper Bank Network, that is actually the supplier for most of the diaper banks across the country, is part of the philanthropic arm of Huggies. We were talking about, Sarah had raised this really great issue last night about, WIC has really significant purchasing power to negotiate lower rates for formula. Is there something that we could do for diapers? And in a way, the National Diaper Bank Network is doing that, because if you can afford to buy them 30,000 diapers at a time, which is a huge semi, so if you have basically a warehouse and someone who can use a forklift, you can buy diapers for 2 cents each and they're regular Huggies diapers. There's also some diaper companies that are coming out. Like if you Google Believe diapers, they promise that for every dollar spent, I think they give like 2 diapers to an organization that helps address diaper need. But really, other than Huggies, so Pampers and Huggies are the 2 big diaper companies in the US. And really Huggies is like, yes, this is a problem we need to address. But yeah, so there are some controversies around that in the diaper banking world, like kind of how much do we kind of continue to address this through the corporate philanthropy and how much do we need to break away from that? So yeah, their markups are significant. I mean, a way of addressing this would be to lower diaper prices, but there's not a financial incentive to do so. Yeah, it's a good question.
I missed the timeline on your pandemic interviews, and I'm curious if they overlapped at all with the child tax credit expansion and if that changed how long?
They did not, unfortunately. Yeah, they tended to. Well, actually, yeah, I'm trying to think. No, they were kind of closer to like the fall of 2020. Yeah, but that's a really good question. I mean, I talked to a couple of people that I interact with, but yeah, like especially students that I have a lot of students who are student parents, and they're like, hey, because you can probably tell this about me. I talk a lot about diapers. I tend to like find a way into every conversation. Oh, that reminds me of this about diapers. So a lot of students would come and say, I got my child tax credit and I can buy diapers. So that's only anecdotal. That's a really good question. I wish almost that I'd had a chance to do some interviews during 2021. Yeah. Yes.
And I'm really curious to hear your perspectives or thoughts about the role of other private charities as well, especially like, for example, shelters that serve families or serve battered women.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be my personal bias because while I'm a woman, I don't have any children, but every time I see like the donation list of things they need, I feel like menstrual products are on there and clothes are on there, but I don't really see like diapers explicitly listed there.
That is a really good question. So a little bit of terminology here. There are diaper banks, there are diaper pantries, and there are diaper closets. And I know you're dying to know the distinction. So diaper banks distribute largely to partner organizations. They do very little direct distribution unless it's like an emergency situation. A lot of shelters, like refugee serving organizations, a lot of those are actually like diaper pantries that have a whole diaper supply that's set up, and that's one of the services they provide. Diaper closets tend to be more like at a doctor's office or like a family resource center that just you literally have a closet of diapers, and if someone's in need, then they're there. But that's an excellent point about, and I'm glad to hear that menstrual supplies are on there. But yeah, it seems like I've noticed a lot with like the disaster aid. There are a lot of diaper banks that are like traveling, like with hurricane relief. There's a lot of work around getting diapers to people during like natural disasters. But yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done. And there's a lot of work to be done in institutions like this. I teach at a school that has 1 in 4 of our students are student parents. And 1 in 3 parents with young kids struggle with diaper needs. So you put those numbers together, and a lot of student parents across the country. And so when I talk on this to people who are interested in parenting student issues, one of the things I also say is this is an issue of educational access. I've had students who can't come to class because they don't have the diapers to go drop off at the campus-based daycare. So fortunately, I had people who run that, and they're like, hey, can we hook up and just make sure that we have diapers so that never happens again? And I was able to get the diaper, technically a pantry, started up through our local food bank. And that's actually, I think, one of the more promising approaches. California, every year since 2018, has devoted $10 million to community diaper distribution through 4 food banks throughout the state. So I think more and more we're seeing food banks have like a diaper distribution because there's more recognition, but like you said, I think there's a lot more to be done. So if you ever see that again and you have the ear of someone who runs that organization, like you think we might add diapers, because a lot of people want to donate diapers. One of the ways that the banks and pantries get diaper donations, if you've had a kid, you know they go through diaper sizes fast. right? And sometimes unexpectedly fast. So if you've got a size 3 and they only used a few and then they have to go to size 4, they'll take those donations of the broken up diapers. Technically, like, there's some laws around that, but there's no parent that I talked to that wouldn't have been very happy to have those loose diapers. Yeah. Thanks for that question.
With how gendered, the diaper need issue is, how much do you see like the policy work being like gendered as well? Like, is this something you see more like female policymakers talk about, or is it now like more policymakers in general are?
That's a really good question, and the short answer is yes. I'll give you the more comprehensive one. I think that's why we're getting more policy traction. So this is coming mostly from my data, my interviews with diaper bankers, who said that, and not to knock older white men, but they said that, you know, legislators who tend to be older white men, when they talk about these issues, a lot of them were like, yeah, ooh, right? And I shared this with someone today. Sorry, I forgot who, but it was one of those things someone says in an interview and you're like, I'm going to quote this in so many papers. I had one of the diaper bankers tell me, you know, still in this country, when it comes to any kind of public support for hygiene items that are required to take care of anything that comes out of a uterus, whether blood or baby, we fall short. And I was like, oh, right, the kind of the pink tax issue. But a lot of people taking on this issue are women. Most diaper bankers are women, but I'm seeing men get more involved. And especially men, you know, we know fathers have been more involved as the generations go on. And so I think you see more and more men taking on this issue. And even in my public presentations, some of the people are like, why don't they just use cloth? And come on, how much can a diaper really cost? I get emails from them like 2 weeks later saying, I'm now a volunteer at my local diaper bank. And so I'm like, okay, well, you know, makes me feel very good. But yeah, I think there is a gender issue, and as we get, I've done a lot of policy and advocacy work in different states, and just last month I was talking with some Iowa legislators, a senator, a state senator, and a state rep, both of them mothers who struggle with diaper need when their kids were young. And so a lot of diaper bankers, that's their trajectory. They're in a more economically stable position, so they found the diaper bank. Or I've talked to a lot of legislators who experience that themselves and really want to address this. But yeah, I think to your point about it being very gendered, yeah. You're welcome.
Is the demonstration project across urban and rural areas fairly well distributed?
That is a good question that I cannot answer yet. I should know the answer to that. I do not know.
What about diaper banks in general?
Yeah, so diaper banks, they're more in urban areas. A lot of people are trying to get more service into rural areas, but yeah, they're like almost every major city. We know now Milwaukee has one, Madison has one. Most kind of mid-sized, larger cities do have diaper banks. They're less common in rural areas. But a lot of people, I saw this with the pandemic, a lot more diaper banks that were trying to do like home deliveries in rural areas to try to address that. As for the 7 grantees, they're on the ACF website, and I will know that answer. It's probably going to be the first things I look up. Sarah.
Can you go back to where you started, which is dads talking to you about diapers? Like, you hinted at this a little bit, right? Like, maybe this is totally invisible to them, but do you have sort of more insights now into what diapers mean to dads or to co-parents or anything like that?
It's a really good question. I think diapers are incredibly important for co-parenting. Even if the dads weren't managing it and the moms were coming to talk to me, and I want to be very upfront, part of it was how I was recruiting. So I recruited through a lot of like prenatal and postnatal healthcare organizations, not exclusively, but there were ways in which I biased my own sample. But for dads, it was really interesting. Again, talking about diapers as like a currency of fatherhood, and not only being able to see their kids, but also to improve their co-parenting relationships with the child's mother. Because, you know, like we know, a lot of dads who don't pay formal child support, right, will offer informal support through things like diapers. So a lot of dads, and I didn't talk to moms in that project, but the moms in this project I did talk to a couple of moms who said, as long as he's showing up with some diapers, I'm not going to go put a child support order on him. So I think it's really important. It also shows moms that, yeah, like dads get it, that this is expensive. And so the dads in this particular program, I really do think there was kind of sometimes like an ultimatum, like you better find a way to bring something to us. And then hence this program was providing the diapers. Does that answer your question?
Did the moms who you interviewed, though, talk about their partners or their co-parents being a key source of diapers? Because they seem to be talking about like scrounging together the money or asking a friend, and we didn't hear in the narratives you shared
That's
about
true.
them going to
Got it.
parents, and I was wondering about that, sort of closing that loop.
Yes, thanks for the clarification. Yes, and they were mixed. Moms tended to talk about dads, if the dads were involved, tended to talk about providing diapers in two different ways. One was, things are good. He's providing diapers, so diapers are the primary source of support. I also talked to a lot of moms who were doing these strategies because they said that dealing with the dad wasn't worth the diapers because the relationship was so strained. But sometimes those relationships were strained because the dad had stopped providing the diapers. So yeah, I think it does have both kind of plays into co-parenting relationship quality in both positive and negative ways. Yeah, thanks for asking that.
So I don't recall you talking about any policy approaches that involve the child care industry. So first question, does Head Start provide diapers?
Yes.
Okay. And then is there any push to get child care providers, like you said at your university, but other places, to provide diapers?
Yeah, that's a good question and a good suggestion. So I think there's a lot of promise there. So yes, Head Start does provide diapers, which is really helpful. It doesn't provide diapers for when the kids are home, but it provides the diapers for when they're in the Head Start program. And even Medicaid will provide some diapers if the child is over the age of 3 and has been diagnosed as medically incontinent. And then daycare centers, there are actually some daycare programs that do provide that as part of their service that are publicly funded. And I didn't interview any moms, but in Iowa, they had a video of a mom who said she only enrolled her kid in the daycare program because it provided formula and diapers. And in fact, she wished that she had the kids home with her, but this was the only way. So I'm like, well, okay, maybe we just provide the formula and diapers. But I think there's a lot of promise there. One population I didn't talk to, but that may be part of a different project, are daycare providers themselves. I talked to, this is more anecdotal, like one of my students has a mom who runs a daycare center, and she's like, she buys diapers all the time, or even the daycare workers are trying to find strategies, like a child who, the parent at the first of the month provides the month's supply of diapers, but the kid's only there 2 or 3 days, so they stockpile those diapers for the kids who need them. So I think even daycare workers are engaging in some diaper work, but I think there's promise there as well. That's a good suggestion.
All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer, very much.
Thank you for your questions and being here.